I walked into that Monday morning meeting expecting to discuss my patient care plans, but instead found myself staring at a termination letter after 30 years as head of oncology. What happened next shocked everyone. My cancer patients refused to let me go, and their fight for me would expose a conspiracy that nearly cost them their lives. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Carter, and nothing could have prepared me for what happened at 8:30 that Monday morning. I'd been running the cancer ward at Riverside Medical for 30 years, watching kids beat leukemia and helping grandparents fight their final battles with dignity. The call came from Marcus Webb, our new hospital CO who'd arrived 6 months ago with his Harvard MBA and zero medical experience. His corner office reeked of expensive cologne and fresh leather. Marcus didn't look up from his laptop when I entered, just motioned toward the chair like I was some intern he was about to scold. Behind his desk hung diplomas from business school and a photo of him shaking hands with pharmaceutical executives at some fancy dinner. "Dr. Carter, I'll be direct," he said, finally closing the laptop with a sharp click. "Your department is costing us too much money. Patient stays are too long, treatment plans too expensive. The board has decided to restructure." I felt my stomach drop. What exactly does that mean? It means we're bringing in Dr. Richard Stone to run oncology. Fresh perspective, modern efficiency protocols. Stone was a young doctor I'd heard about, more interested in quick discharges than patient outcomes. Marcus slid a manila envelope across his polished desk. "Your termination is effective immediately." I stared at the envelope without touching it. Through his office window I could see the cancer ward where my patients were probably wondering where I was. 8-year-old Tommy Williams was scheduled for his final chemotherapy session today. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting for test results that would determine if her surgery was successful. 30 years of service and you're firing me in a 5-minute meeting? Marcus shrugged. "It's just business, doctor. Nothing personal." But as I stood to leave, something on his desk caught my eye. A document labeled Insurance Optimization Protocol was partially visible under other papers. I could only see the header, but the words "early discharge targets" made my blood run cold. "Is there anything else?" Marcus asked, noticing my hesitation. I shook my head and walked out, but my mind was racing. What I'd glimpsed on that desk suggested this wasn't just about saving money. Security was already waiting in the hallway to escort me out, but I managed to send one quick text to Nancy Jenkins, my head nurse. 3 simple words that would set everything in motion. Nancy met me in the hospital parking lot 20 minutes later, her face pale and worried. She'd worked with me for 15 years and knew my patients better than anyone. Her hands shook as she handed me a folder. "Elizabeth, you need to see this. I made copies before they could lock down your files." Inside were patient charts I'd never seen before, all marked with Dr. Stone's signature and dated 3 weeks ago. Tommy Williams was scheduled for discharge tomorrow, despite needing 2 more weeks of treatment. Mrs. Rodriguez was marked for outpatient monitoring only, even though her cancer markers were still elevated. "Stone's been reviewing cases since last month," Nancy whispered. "He's been planning to discharge your sickest patients the moment he takes over." I flipped through more charts, each one more disturbing than the last. Patients who needed intensive care were being marked for home treatment. Children fighting for their lives were labeled as stable for discharge. The cost savings were calculated in the margins like these were products, not people. They've been planning this for weeks, I realized. Marcus hired Stone specifically to cut costs by sending patients home too early. Nancy nodded. "But there's more. I overheard Stone talking to Marcus yesterday. He said something about insurance companies paying bonuses for hospitals that keep treatment costs below certain limits." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Carter, this is Maria Santos, Tommy Williams' mom. Nancy gave me your number. Tommy's asking for you. They say he's being discharged tomorrow but he still feels so sick. Can you help us?" Then another message. "Dr. Carter, this is James Rodriguez. My wife's cancer numbers aren't good but they're sending her home anyway. We don't know what to do." Patient after patient was reaching out, confused and scared about their sudden discharges. These families trusted me with their lives and now I wasn't even allowed in the building to help them. Nancy grabbed my arm. "Elizabeth, there's something else. I heard Marcus on a conference call this morning. He was bragging to someone about how much money the new protocols would save. He called your patients expensive liabilities that needed to be managed more efficiently. I stared at the parking lot where I'd walked every morning for 3 decades. Inside that building, people I'd fought alongside in their darkest moments were being treated like numbers on a spreadsheet. But Marcus Webb had made one crucial mistake when he fired me. He'd forgotten that my patients weren't just cases in a file. By Tuesday evening, my phone hadn't stopped ringing for 18 hours straight. What started with Maria Santos and James Rodriguez had turned into something Marcus Webb never saw coming. 43 families were calling, texting, showing up at my house with medical files clutched in their hands. I sat in my living room that felt more like a war room now, with patient charts spread across every surface. Nancy had smuggled out more documents, and the picture was becoming crystal clear. Stone wasn't just discharging patients early, he was falsifying their medical records to make it look justified. "Dr. Carter," came a small voice from my doorway. I looked up to see Tommy Williams, 8 years old and barely weighing 60 pounds, standing next to his mother Maria. His baseball cap covered where his hair used to be, but his eyes still held that fighting spirit I'd come to love. "Tommy, sweetheart, what are you doing here?" Maria's voice cracked as she spoke. "They discharged him this afternoon. Said he was cured and ready to go home. But look at him, Elizabeth. Does he look cured to you?" Tommy was pale, shaky, and I could see the telltale signs that his white blood cell count was still dangerously low. One infection could kill him in his current state. I knelt down to his level, gently checking his lymph nodes. They were still swollen. "The new doctor said I'm all better," Tommy whispered. "But I don't feel better. I feel worse than yesterday." My hands trembled with rage as I looked at his discharge papers. Stone had marked Tommy's blood work as within normal limits, when Nancy's copies showed his numbers were still critically low. This wasn't just medical malpractice, it was attempted murder disguised as cost savings. "Maria, how many other families got discharged today?" 12 that I know of. We've all been texting each other. Mrs. Rodriguez, the Peterson family with their teenage daughter, the elderly man from room 15. All of us were told we're fine and sent home. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from Dr. Patricia Mills at Children's Hospital across town. "Elizabeth, I'm seeing discharge papers from Riverside that don't match the medical conditions I'm observing. These patients need immediate readmission. What's happening over there?" I showed the message to Maria, whose face went white. "You mean other doctors can see that something's wrong too?" "Yes, and that's exactly what we need." I was already formulating a plan. "Maria, I need you to call every family you can reach. Tell them to get second opinions at other hospitals. Document everything. And whatever you do, don't let them intimidate you into staying quiet." Tommy tugged on my sleeve. "Dr. Carter, are you going to save us like you always do?" I looked down at this brave little boy who'd been fighting cancer for 2 years, who trusted me with his life, who was being sent home to die so Marcus Webb could impress his board members with cost savings. "Yes, Tommy. But this time, you're going to help me save everyone else too." Wednesday brought the kind of chaos that legends are made of, though I wouldn't understand the full scope until much later. I stood in the lobby of Channel 7 News at exactly 9 a.m., surrounded by 26 families whose lives hung in the balance. Maria Santos held Tommy's hand on one side of me, while James Rodriguez supported his wife Elena on the other. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Carter?" whispered Patricia Coleman, whose 16-year-old daughter Sarah was scheduled for a bone marrow transplant that Stone had suddenly cancelled. "Going public could ruin your career." I looked around at these brave people who'd chosen to trust me over a system that was failing them. "Patricia, they already tried to ruin my career. Now they're trying to ruin your daughter's life." The reporter, Jessica Clark, had been covering medical stories for 15 years. When I'd called her the night before and explained what was happening, she'd immediately agreed to investigate. What I didn't expect was for her to bring a camera crew and a medical expert to review the documents in real time. "Dr. Carter," Jessica began as the cameras started rolling, "you're alleging that Riverside Medical is deliberately endangering cancer patients to save money. That's an extremely serious accusation." Before I could answer, Tommy Williams stepped forward, his small voice somehow carrying more authority than any hospital administrator. "The new doctor said I'm all better, but I can't even walk to the bathroom without getting dizzy. Dr. Carter taught me to know when my body isn't right." Jessica knelt down to Tommy's level. "And what do you think is happening, Tommy?" I think they're lying because they don't want to spend money to make me better. Out of the mouths of babes. Dr. Michael Foster, the medical expert Jessica had brought, was reviewing the discharge papers with growing alarm. These blood counts show active disease requiring immediate treatment. Discharging these patients isn't just negligent, it's criminal. That's when my phone rang. Marcus Webb's name flashed on the screen. I answered on speaker so everyone could hear. Dr. Carter, I understand you're speaking to the media. This is highly inappropriate and potentially libelous. I'm offering you one chance to retract your statements. Marcus, I'm standing here with 26 families whose lives you're gambling with to impress your board. The only inappropriate thing here is your willingness to let children die for profit. You have no proof of any wrongdoing. Dr. Stone is a qualified physician making appropriate medical decisions. That's when Nancy Jenkins appeared in the lobby, slightly out of breath and carrying a box of files. Actually, Marcus, we have plenty of proof. She'd been recording her phone calls with Stone, including one where he'd bragged about how much money each early discharge would save. Marcus's voice turned ice cold. You're all making a terrible mistake. Riverside Medical has attorneys who will destroy every one of you financially. Dr. Carter will never practice medicine again, and these families will lose everything they have. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd threatened children and their parents on live television, and Jessica Clark was broadcasting every word to the entire city. Maria Santos stepped closer to the phone. Mr. Webb, my son is 8 years old and fighting for his life. You want to sue me for trying to save him? Go ahead. Sue a mother for protecting her child. See how that plays on the evening news. One by one, other parents joined in. Elena Rodriguez, still weak from surgery but standing straighter than I'd seen her in months. Patricia Coleman, whose daughter Sarah was listening from her wheelchair. The Peterson family, whose teenage son had been told his brain tumor was manageable at home. We're not afraid of your lawyers, Patricia said firmly. We're afraid of your doctors. Marcus hung up, but the damage was done. Jessica looked directly into the camera. This is a developing story that appears to show systematic patient endangerment at one of our city's largest hospitals. We'll continue following this investigation as it unfolds. As we left the news station, Tommy tugged on my coat. Dr. Carter, do you think he's scared now? I smiled down at him. Tommy, I think he's about to discover what happens when you mess with people who have nothing left to lose. My phone was buzzing with calls from reporters, other hospitals offering jobs, and something I hadn't expected, other doctors from Riverside calling to say they'd been watching the news and wanted to help. The revolution was just beginning. Thursday morning brought federal agents to Marcus Webb's office, and I watched it all unfold from the coffee shop across the street. What had started as a local news story had exploded into something much bigger when Jessica Clark's investigation caught the attention of the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. Agent Rebecca Turner had called me at 6 a.m. Dr. Carter, we need to talk. Your case isn't isolated. We've been tracking similar patterns at 17 hospitals across 3 states, all managed by the same consulting firm that Riverside hired. I met her at the federal building downtown, where she showed me files that made my stomach turn. Marcus Webb wasn't just cutting corners at Riverside, he was part of a nationwide scheme to defraud Medicare and private insurance companies by discharging patients early and billing for full treatment cycles. The consulting firm teaches hospitals how to game the system, Agent Turner explained. Discharge patients before expensive treatments are complete, falsify recovery records and pocket the difference. They've stolen over $40 million in the past 2 years. But the real shock came when she opened another file. Dr. Carter, did you know that Marcus Webb has no medical background whatsoever? His Harvard MBA is fake. His real name is Martin Walsh and he's been running hospital scams for 8 years under different identities. My hands shook as I stared at the mugshot of the man who'd fired me. The families need to know this. They're still being treated by Dr. Stone, who's following orders from a criminal. That's where we need your help, Agent Turner said. We need someone the patients trust to gather evidence from inside the hospital. Would you be willing to go back? The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Dr. Patricia Mills from Children's Hospital had offered me a consulting position that gave me legitimate access to transfer medical records. When patients were moved from Riverside to other hospitals for second opinions, I could legally review their files and compare them to what Stone was reporting. That afternoon I walked back into Riverside Medical for the first time since my firing. Nancy Jenkins met me at the main entrance, her face a mixture of relief and worry. "Elizabeth, things have gotten so much worse since you left. 3 more children were discharged yesterday, all of them sicker than Tommy was. Dr. Stone is rushing through cases like he's trying to clear the entire ward." We made our way to the pediatric wing, where I used my consulting credentials to review transfer paperwork. What I found was systematic fraud on a scale I'd never imagined. Every single patient Stone had discharged showed signs of active disease that he'd covered up in the official records. "Nancy, look at this," I whispered, showing her Emma Peterson's chart. Stone documented her brain tumor as completely resolved yesterday, but the MRI from 3 days ago shows it's actually growing. "Dear God," Nancy breathed. "If her parents believe she's cured and stop monitoring for symptoms." My phone buzzed with a text from Maria Santos. "Dr. Carter, Tommy collapsed this morning. We're at Children's Hospital ER. They say his infection count is through the roof. How did Riverside miss this?" I rushed to Children's Hospital, where I found Tommy hooked up to 4 antibiotics, his little body fighting an infection that should have been caught days ago. Dr. Mills pulled me aside with his latest blood work. "Elizabeth, this child was hours away from septic shock when they brought him in. The infection had been building for at least a week. How could any doctor miss this?" "Because the doctor wasn't trying to heal him," I said grimly. "He was trying to get rid of him." Maria Santos grabbed my hand when she saw me. "They told us he was fine. They sent him home to die, didn't they?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Agent Turner's voice was urgent. "Dr. Carter, we need you back at the federal building immediately. Marcus Webb just tried to flee the country and we found something in his office that you need to see." Tommy looked up at me from his hospital bed, weak but alert. "Dr. Carter, are you going to stop the bad people?" I squeezed his hand gently. "Yes, Tommy. And this time, we're going to make sure they can never hurt another child again." As I headed to meet Agent Turner, Nancy called with news that would shock everyone. "Elizabeth, you're not going to believe this. After the agents searched Marcus's office, they found a list. It's not just our hospital. Stone has been hired to do the same thing at 4 other hospitals. There are hundreds of cancer patients being sent home to die." The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, but what Agent Turner showed me next would prove that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself. 6 months later, I stood in the main lobby of the Elizabeth Carter Cancer Treatment Center, watching Tommy Williams ring the ceremonial bell that marked the end of his successful treatment. The sound echoed through halls painted in bright, hopeful colors chosen by the children themselves. The transformation had been remarkable. After Marcus Webb was arrested and Dr. Stone lost his medical license, the state had placed Riverside Medical under federal oversight. But the real victory came when the insurance companies, facing massive fraud charges, agreed to fund an entirely new cancer center to serve the patients who'd been harmed. "Dr. Carter," Tommy called out, his hair grown back thick and curly, his cheeks pink with health. "Look what I made for you." He handed me a drawing of stick figures in white coats, with "My Hero" written in crayon across the top. Agent Turner approached from across the lobby, wearing a smile I'd rarely seen during our investigation. "Elizabeth, I wanted to give you the final update. Marcus Webb, or Martin Walsh, his real name, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The consulting firm that trained him has been shut down, and we've recovered $38 million for the victims." But the news that meant the most came from Nancy Jenkins, who'd become our head nurse when the new center opened. "We just got word from the medical board. Dr. Stone's arrest led to investigations at those other hospitals. They've identified over 200 patients who were discharged too early. Most of them are getting the treatment they need now." Maria Santos walked over with her husband, both of them beaming. "Dr. Carter, we wanted you to know that Tommy's been cancer-free for 4 months now. The doctors say his prognosis is excellent." What struck me most wasn't the vindication or the justice, but the quiet moments that reminded me why I'd fought so hard. Elena Rodriguez had returned to work after her successful treatment. Sarah Coleman was back in school, her brain tumor completely gone. The Peterson family had started a support group for other families facing childhood cancer. "Elizabeth," came a familiar voice behind me. I turned to see Dr. Patricia Mills, who'd become our research director. "Channel 7 is here for the anniversary interview. Are you ready?" Jessica Clark was waiting in my office with her camera crew, the same reporter who'd helped expose the conspiracy. Dr. Carter, it's been 6 months since you were fired from Riverside Medical. Looking back, would you do anything differently? I thought about the question while looking out my window at the children's garden, where Tommy and other young patients were playing despite their treatments. Jessica, I spent 30 years thinking that being a good doctor meant following hospital rules and keeping my head down. I learned that sometimes being a good doctor means fighting the hospital itself. What would you say to other healthcare workers who see problems but are afraid to speak up? I'd tell them what Tommy Williams taught me, I replied. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is telling the biggest truth. And I'd remind them that patients aren't numbers on a spreadsheet, they're someone's child, someone's parent, someone's reason for fighting. After the interview, I walked through the treatment center one more time. In the pediatric wing, new patients were beginning their journeys with hope instead of fear. In the adult ward, families gathered around beds where their loved ones received care based on medical need, not insurance quotas. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Carter, my name is Linda Foster. My daughter was just diagnosed with leukemia, and our local hospital says there's nothing they can do. I saw your story on the news. Can you help us? I smiled and typed back, bring her in Monday morning. We never give up on our patients here. Nancy appeared in my doorway. Elizabeth, the board of directors from 3 hospitals called today. They want to implement our patient care model at their facilities. I looked around at what we'd built from the ashes of betrayal and injustice. Marcus Webb had tried to reduce human lives to profit margins, but he'd forgotten something crucial. When you corner people fighting for their lives, they fight back harder than you ever imagined. The bell in our lobby rang again as another patient completed treatment successfully. The sound wasn't just celebrating one person's victory. It was announcing that sometimes the best way to heal a broken system is to build a better one from scratch. And we were just getting started.